Hello, Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about Prokofiev's Symphony Number 5, a symphony that's his most popular after the classical symphony, that's been recorded lots of times and has just a huge raft of terrible recordings and performances. Everybody thinks they can do it, and they just blow it with an amazing consistency. Some conductors, like Bernstein, did it twice. The first time, okay. The second time, bleh, you know? And others, there are no great recordings, for example, by Russian conductors. Maybe the Svensky, maybe. It's not a bad performance. But on the whole, for reasons that I find incomprehensible, this symphony does very poorly on records for the most part. It's not really hard to do. It has a few interpretive issues, but basically, it's a big, powerful, unsubtle piece of music, and you just follow the directions. It's like a recipe, You add the right ingredients, you cook it at the right temperature, and poof, out it comes, and it's fine. It should be, but it's not here. The things just don't work out. Now, what are the issues that most recordings seem to have? First, the first movement, coda. I'm a tam-tam guy. Between the cymbals and the tam-tam are going crash, bang, crash, bang. You're supposed to hear them. They're supposed to be equally loud, first of all, and cut through the texture and create an absolutely terrifying noise. Now, most conductors hate noise. They try and achieve subtlety, the morons, where Prokofiev doesn't want subtlety. He wants noise. He wants an ear-splitting din. He wants it to be frightening. And that's all you need to do. But there is a subtlety here. And that's not the tam-tam, it's the cymbal parts. Prokofiev had very specific notation for his cymbal parts. You have suspended cymbals and plate cymbals, the normal crashed ones, and you have cymbals, struck with an iron rod, which he writes verghe, V-E-R-G-H-E, usually I think is the way he spells it. And you have to, with brushes, with a wire brush. Those things are very clearly marked, usually, in Prokofiev's scores. And you just have to do what he says. Now, at the climax here, you have suspended cymbals, then tam-tam, until you get to the single stroke where the tam-tam and cymbals play together. Then you switch to the crash cymbals to make, of course, a bigger crash. Isn't that smart? And I can show you. If you look here, here's your score, which I'm going to stick all the way up here. And you see where it says Piatti over here? There's Piatti. And over the cymbal parts, Prokofiev places, I think it's the other page here. Yeah, we got to do this page. Places a little tiny cross over the cymbal part when he wants suspended cymbals, and a circle, an O, over the cymbal part where he wants plate cymbals, because circle means plates. Get it? Round plates. Why don't they do what he wrote? Why don't they make sure that the percussionists equalize their sound? Why don't percussionists make sure that they're cooperating in major orchestras? I don't get it. I once saw a performance of this with the San Francisco Symphony where, in Davies Hall, you can sit behind the orchestra. And I was in the front row behind the orchestra. And I was talking to the percussionists, over the railing. And I said, come on, guys, make sure you get your sound equal. They thought, of course, I was being obnoxious because I was telling them how to play. And they did. They did it. They did it great. The only problem was the bass drummist got lost at the end of the finale. You can't win them all, right? But, it's really one of those things. So what recordings, even if they don't do everything that I suggest, that section, are the best ones. I'll get to that in a minute because there are two other issues we need to talk about. First is the adagio. Beautiful movement, but it needs to flow. It shouldn't be taken too slowly. It's one of those. Prokofiev was a pianist, and he wrote piano music, and even his orchestral music is sort of orchestrated piano music. The adagio begins with one of those rising arpeggio motives he uses all the time, just da 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 da. He does something similar in the middle movement of the second violin concerto, and you can find him all over the place with Prokofiev. It's like the Moonlight Sonata, right? It can't be too monotonous. It has to have flow. And some performances, I think, just sort of bog down in the adagio. And then the finale, which is a rondo that has a delightful opening theme. But the episodes where the tempo relaxes, they can sound very, very dull if they're not played with enough character, and if they don't have enough momentum, residual momentum, shall we say, from those bits of the rondo. But those are the only issues. After that, the coda, the finale has to just go like the wind, and everyone has to go crazy, and that's it. Very, very simple. But I just wish people would do what the music simply demands. It's not. I keep saying this. This is not rocket science. It really isn't. But you wouldn't know that to hear the recordings. Anyway, so what are the best ones? First, I only have 5 of these because. No, 6? Yeah, no, 5. Because that's really, there may be some other good ones, but these are the best of the lot. Andre Previn's. He did it twice. First, with the London Symphony Orchestra, a very, very good performance. This was kind of the go-to performance in the 1970s. It was a vintage EMI recording, the LSO in excellent form, a very exciting performance. Not too much on the fast side in that sense, but they hit all the climaxes and have that nice Russian sort of sound that we like. Then he remade it in Los Angeles, with the Los Angeles Philharmonic for Phillips. Also a very good performance. A little heavier, a little darker, a little less tam-tam in the coda of the first movement, but still perfectly audible. It's a very, very good performance. And definitely either one of them will serve its purpose very well. You'll be very satisfied. However, the next ones may not be the ones that you think of first when you think of Prokofiev, but Ted Kuchar, Theodore Kuchar with the National Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine on Naxos. This is a great performance. It's exciting, it's impulsive, it's raw and edgy, and it takes no prisoners, and that's what you want in this music. The National Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine may not be the most polished ensemble, but polish was not Prokofiev's point. This is a raw, edgy, exciting, impulsive symphony. It does not need subtlety and sophistication. It needs to have guts, and this performance has guts. Next, speaking of subtlety, well, Herbert Funke and the Berlin Philharmonic. Who would have thought, right? From a conductor who basically hated percussion, hated woodwinds, hated anything except the strings. The brass he could get along with now and again. In this performance, first of all, he got a tam-tam somewhere that is high and light and splashy and noisy as hell, and it sounds fabulous in this work. Sometimes Karajan really cared. There's no bass. You don't hear bass drum anywhere. Might as well not be there. I don't understand that. But the string playing, oh my God. You wouldn't think this is a piece that's made for the strings, but when the mass strings come in with that unison theme in the coda of the first movement, bum, bum, ba, da, 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 that? It's like a wall of sound that just hits you. It's extraordinary, the sonority they make. I'm not sure if they ever could have sounded like that live. I don't know if that was even possible, but holy cow, it sounds magnificent. And the finale is as light and zippy and as you could want. And the adagio, because of that string section, drop dead gorgeous. Absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It's just another example of how, Karajan, in my opinion, actually did his best work when he was outside of his alleged Fach, when he wasn't playing the German standard repertoire, when he did other things and gave them, that's when he was able to really impress the music with his personal stamp and give us something special. And this Prokofiev Fifth is as great a thing as he ever did. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. However, when we come to the final choice, the Prokofiev Fifth to have, the one that just has a snap and snarl and doesn't really care about the niceties, because the symphony doesn't have a lot of niceties. Järvi with the Scottish National Orchestra, now the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. This is the Prokofiev cycle to own also. Generally speaking, it's the best one out there. But in the fifth, it's a swift, completely uninhibited, for once, uninhibited performance. Järvi's great ability was to let the orchestra play at the climaxes. He never held back. Sometimes he could be messy and sort of careless and let things get out of hand, but this isn't the kind of music where you're going to really risk that. It's not tricky for the orchestra. It just needs to be given its head. It has to be able to do what comes naturally, and that's what happens here. He also has in the Scottish National a terrific brass section. In that coda of the first movement, when the trumpets come in with their low notes, it has real menace in this performance. And the slow movement is absolutely beautiful and flowing, and the finale is exciting. It's as exciting as hell. It's just terrific. So, if you want a Prokofiev fifth that really tells you about what the Prokofiev fifth should be, then Järvi and the Scottish National on Chandos, this is the version to own. I would definitely have Karajan as a supplement. You may want to get Kuchar as well, because in its own way, he's just as exciting as Järvi is. Like I said, this is not the kind of symphony that should be so tricky. And sometimes I think the simplest things are the ones that are the most difficult to bring off. People have the most trouble just doing the obvious. They overthink, they overinterpret. Conductors, they want to show, what hot stuff they are on the podium, how they can make the orchestra respond to their every whim. None of that applies in this symphony. It just needs to be big and bold and exciting, and Järvi's your guy. But, so many recordings. In order to find the best ones, we have to keep on listening. That's the name of the game. Thank you, and enjoy your Prokofiev fifths.